We have to be on the same page, ladies and gentlemen. Cornerstone rankings aren't everybody in Dynasty. Now, yes, of course, Christian McCaffrey has a ton of value. Yes, of course, A.J. Brown has a ton of value in Dynasty for the right team. Those are contending rosters that are ready to win in 2023 and are happy to take those assets that aren't going to continue to rise in Dynasty value because they're going to give elite levels of production. Now, yes, I'll rather have A.J. Brown over Jameson Williams, someone we're going to talk about in this video later on. But these Cornerstone rankings will be players that are 24 years old or younger and options that we are fine building around if you are a rebuilding team or if you are a contending team. Now, of course, if you want to get access to all of my Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings, you can find those on flockfantasy.com, as well as all my premium content. We're going to keep our Dynasty rankings updated there 24/7, 365 days a year. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, you're going to get 30% off any subscription. And also with promo code FLOCK, yours truly will go through and break down your Dynasty Fantasy Football team in a podcast. One last note, make sure you're dropping a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And of course, if you want to let me know that I'm an idiot, you can do so in the comment section. Now let's go into this tier one here. Not too much to discuss, right? We have Jefferson, Chase in their own tier. Now, the beginning of the offseason, there was no real debate. Nobody would come out there and argue, no, Mason, come on, man, you got to have Jamar Chase over Justin Jefferson. No, everybody can look at the production you've had from Justin Jefferson through the first 3 years of his NFL career. It's clearly more productive of an option than Jamar Chase has been. And also, he's just in a great situation moving forward. Well, things have changed, right? Whereas you've always had a better quarterback for Jamar Chase in comparison to what Kirk Cousins gives Justin Jefferson. But where Jefferson had the leg up over Chase is Jamar Chase had to compete for targets with T. Higgins. Jamar Chase was playing alongside another top option in his offense. Of course, Higgins will be someone that we talk about in just 1 second, whereas you never had that in Minnesota with Justin Jefferson. Well, now, not only do you have TJ Hawkinson coming over, one of the best young tight ends in the entire NFL, but at the same time, you are looking at a team that goes out there and adds in Jordan Addison, who will be competition for Jefferson. Of course, not taking a lot away from Justin Jefferson, hopefully improves the offense overall. But now you do have competition for Justin Jefferson that was not there before. And if you really wanted to have Jamar Chase over him because Joe Burrow versus Kirk Cousins, I'd be fine with it at this point. But now let's drop down to tier 2, where we're going to have Bijan Robinson, okay? With Bijan, super simple, right? He's an elite prospect. Not only is he an elite prospect, but if you were looking at the year one expectations, they are through the roof. Right now in underdog drafts, just for 2023, not Dynasty, he's being drafted as the running back 2 off the board. He's being drafted ahead of Austin Eckler. He's being drafted ahead of Jonathan Taylor. He's being drafted ahead of Saquon Barkley. Those are the expectations that you have from Bijan Robinson in year one, and he's a rookie. Come on. I mean, this is someone that's just 21 years old, already going to be stepping in and being an elite level producer for you. I don't really think you can argue with having Bijan here, to be honest. Now, 4, we're going to have CeeDee Lamb. If we're going to be looking at Lamb as a wide receiver that honestly is disrespected a little bit, I feel, in the Dynasty and overall NFL community, right? Because if you're looking at CeeDee Lamb, it's a wide receiver that almost posts 1,400 receiving yards this past year. This is a wide receiver that's very close in age to someone like Zay Flowers. I mean, I like Lamb a ton. Obviously, you're on the lookout to see if Hopkins is going to go over to Dallas. He's probably not going to, but dropping down a tier, this is where things get actually interesting, right? You are going to be looking at Garrett Wilson as our next guy. And what's very fun to see in those 2023 underdog best ball drafts is people are going out there and they are already valuing Garrett Wilson as an elite level wide receiver for this season. Now, of course, phenomenal prospect coming out of Ohio State. Great rookie year, massive quarterback upgrade. But if you're looking at the expectations that people have for 2023, you see some drafts on underdog where Garrett Wilson is going ahead of CeeDee Lamb, where Garrett Wilson is going ahead of Devontae Adams. So wide receiver that's 22 years old. This is a wide receiver that obviously we're fine building around on a rebuilding roster. There's not too much to discuss here. Our next guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, very similar mold, right? St. Brown a year older than Garrett Wilson, but with St. Brown, very unique situation. You kind of have to figure out what the long term is going to look like when you get Jameson Williams fully implemented into this offense. We'll talk about Jameson Williams a little bit more at the end of this video. In a way, though, I kind of like Jameson Williams coming over to Detroit and hopefully improving the overall offense while not taking enough volume for it to actually matter from an Amon-Ra St. Brown perspective. But now dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Breece Hall. With Breece Hall, I think you have to have him as the running back 2 in Dynasty. And it's crazy to say, right? Because with Breece Hall, this was a running back that we saw about a month of production from this past year before he tears an ACL, and now he's coming off a torn ACL. And you're like, okay, come on, Mason. Can we really have a running back coming off a torn ACL at 2 overall at the running back position in particular? I think you can. Very similar to Bijan. He was a running back that checked every single box coming out of the NFL draft. I mean, he had the draft capital that indicates that he's going to get opportunity. On top of this, he had the size to be a bell cow. On top of this, he had a great athletic profile. And on top of this, he was a phenomenal pass catcher in college. He was only behind Austin Eckler in targets at the beginning of this past season at the running back position. Dynasty, it's hard to get a value on Breece Hall because everybody already knows who he is. Everybody's already all in. I will say if you're drafting like in 2023 best ball leagues, however, you are seeing Breece Hall fall to the middle to the end of the 3rd round. And in my mind, even with him coming off a torn ACL, I think the expectations for Hall should be even higher this next season with the quarterback upgrade that you have with Aaron Rodgers. So I've been drafting Hall not only in Dynasty, but also in redraft best ball. And of course, if you want to get in a draft today, you can do so on Underdog Fantasy. Link in the description, link in the comment section. When you sign up for Underdog with promo code FLOCK, you're going to get a 100% deposit match up to $100. You are going to get my 2023 Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. And on top of that, you'll get a free trial to flockfantasy.com. So I definitely recommend you going over there. I mean, hell, we're drafting teams literally every single day on the live stream. But now let's go over to our next guy. Let's look at Jalen Waddle here. And honestly, I can kind of go back and forth. We're going to have Jalen Waddle and Chris Olave back to back. With Waddle, obviously, he's a little bit older, right? At the same time, he was a league-winning wide receiver last year with the #1 wide receiver in the NFL in his offense with Tyreek Hill and with this starting quarterback missing time. With a few assumptions here, I think that Jalen Waddle can continue to improve and be a locked and loaded wide receiver 1 for years to come. 1, Tyreek Hill loses just a step. I don't know if this will happen in 2023. I don't know if this will happen in 2024, but given the way Tyreek Hill wins with the athleticism and given his age, I would be surprised if Tyreek Hill continues to lead the NFL in receiving yards. Not saying Tyreek Hill is going to be bad by any means, but if Waddle can take 5 to 10% of that production from Tyreek as Waddle steps into his prime and as Tyreek Hill pushes 30, 31 years old, I think you could see the continued improvement there. Also, you could just have Tua healthy. If Tua stays healthy, this is a quarterback that is significantly better than some of the options that were going out there at backup for the Miami Dolphins this past season. I know Tua gets a lot of hate, but at the end of the day, Tua was #1 in the NFL from an adjusted yards per pass attempt standpoint, literally only behind Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts this past season. So I actually really like betting on Tua's bounce back and this entire overall Miami Dolphins offense. Now, going down to our next guy with Chris Olave, you had Andy Dalton at quarterback and Olave putting up one of the best rookie wide receiver seasons we've seen in a very long time. If you were comparing Chris Olave to what we've had historically, Chris Olave is right in line with what we've seen from AJ Green, right in line with what we've seen from rookie season Julio Jones, Mike Evans. I mean, these Hall of Fame level wide receivers. And on top of this, you're getting a quarterback upgrade where I don't necessarily think Derek Carr is a great NFL quarterback, but I am pretty confident in saying that he is going to be better than what you had with Andy Dalton this past season. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to be looking at Jonathan Taylor. I almost didn't want to include Jonathan Taylor on this list, right? Because Jonathan Taylor, yes, he's 24 years old. Yes, technically he qualifies. But in reality, if you're a rebuilding team, I honestly would say you don't want to be rostering Jonathan Taylor. I'd say Taylor's more so for that contending roster. And if you're a rebuilder, I would probably look to sell Jonathan Taylor and in return get back like Kenneth Walker and a pick upgrade, right? If you're a rebuilding roster and you could go through and sell JT and get Kenneth Walker in a first, you do that in a heartbeat. If you can go get Travis Etienne in a first, you do that in a heartbeat. Now, of course, the question is, can you get that level of return? Now, our next two guys, we are going to have T. Higgins and Devonta Smith, two wide receivers that are clearly the wide receiver twos in their own offense, but these are guys that are just so good to build around in Dynasty. I mean, specifically with T. Higgins, he's the perfect example of a wide receiver where his value is going nowhere over the next 3 to 4 seasons, whereas if you're a contending team, yeah, T. Higgins could possibly be a low-end wide receiver 1 this next year, or if you're a rebuilding team, you don't really feel like T. Higgins is going to be losing out on any dynasty value going into 2024. So just the perfect blend of long-term, short-term production where they fit any roster. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to be looking at Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, this is something we had to make the adjustment from. If you were looking at underdog drafts currently, just for 2023, you see some people going out there and taking Jahmyr Gibbs over Travis Etienne. Now, it's not every draft. In the majority of drafts, they're going pretty much back to back. But what that tells me is if the expectations for Travis Etienne and Jahmyr Gibbs are neck and neck for this upcoming season, one of these guys is a rookie. The other one is, I mean, pretty damn old considering he's only going into the second season we'll have seen him play. I mean, you kind of have to assume that Jahmyr Gibbs will be worth dramatically more this next season. So to be honest with you, the reason I flipped these guys in our rankings is strictly what we are seeing with the expectations in best ball drafts just for 2023. And you know, someone I took over Jahmyr Gibbs in almost every single rookie draft was Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now with JSN, I mean, the main reason we're going through and we are taking him in every single rookie draft, even though we'll have Gibbs ranked higher, is I play in a lot of leagues that you get to start 3 wide receivers and then you have 3 to 4 flex spots, right? So you're able to start 6 to 7 wide receivers on a week-to-week basis. And in a format like that, wide receiver is going to be king. You can never have too much depth. So if you were in a rookie draft with me and we were playing in that format, yes, I'll take JSN there. In reality, if you're playing in like a dynasty league that's going to be a little shallower, where you start 8 to 9 guys, they're probably going to be better off taking the running back. Both guys are phenomenal prospects. I mean, Jackson Smith-Njigba is the best wide receiver prospect we've seen since Jamar Chase. I mean, I don't need to dive into JSN anymore. Y'all know I've been drooling over this guy literally all offseason. Now, dropping down to our next tier, Drake London was also a phenomenal wide receiver prospect. And at the same time, Drake London, I mean, we've deemed him the secret elite wide receiver. From a market share perspective, he was at 29% at 21 years old in Atlanta. This was the highest mark we've seen from any 21-year-old player since 2000. Like the guys after this, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, were hovering around like 25%. We've never seen anything like this. Now, of course, the primary issue is with the Atlanta Falcons and the next guy we'll have here in Kyle Pitts, you just have no passing volume. Like if you're looking at Kyle Pitts, I'd say Kyle Pitts is an elite talent as well, where this is possibly the best tight end prospect to ever come into the NFL. He had more receiving yards as a rookie than any tight end since Mike Ditka. And on top of this, he was only 21. Like you have Kyle Pitts as a younger player than Zay Flowers. Kyle Pitts is going into year 3 and he's a tight end where you don't expect those tight ends to produce early. So honestly, because the skill positional advantage that you get with Pitts, I'll probably have Pitts over London just because it's way, way more difficult to go out there and find that elite level tight end than it will be a wide receiver. Now, our next guy, I'm going to have Kenneth Walker. Now, with Walker, we had him higher than this, obviously, before the NFL draft, but you have to move him down dramatically. You bring in Zach Charbonnet. I truly do expect this to be like a 60-40 split between Walker and Zach Charbonnet this next season. And the big thing is, if you're looking at these players as prospects, you can say, while Kenneth Walker did catch the ball in year 1, coming out of school, Kenneth Walker was never sold to be some phenomenal receiving down running back, right? No, Kenneth Walker was going to be that first and second down grinder that was going to be able to break off big plays given his athletic profile. But the guy who actually can catch passes here in Seattle is going to be Zach Charbonnet. And if we're looking at the moves the Seattle Seahawks are taking, I mean, it looks like they're getting ready to just throw the piss out of the ball this next season. If you're looking at this, they go through and they take JSN while already having DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett to possibly give them the best 3 wide receivers set in the NFL. And then they go out there and they look to improve upon that by bringing in a receiving down back in Zach Charbonnet. So I'd imagine the receiving down usage for Kenneth Walker takes a pretty big hit this next season. Now, of course, I mean, hell, the man was a pretty strong prospect, phenomenal as a rookie, and still very young. Our next guy is going to be Christian Watson. Now with Christian Watson, there are a few red flags, right? One, the touchdown efficiency is never going to maintain. If you're looking at the fact that he's going out there and pretty much in 1 out of every 9, 1 out of every 10 targets, the man's scoring a touchdown, we know just mathematically speaking, that's going to come back down to earth. And generally, that's going to greatly impact the fantasy football output that you get from that given player. We see this with people freaking out, right, about Chase Claypool's rookie season and everybody going all into Chase Claypool in year 2. And in reality, all he did was get a little lucky with touchdowns in his rookie season. So that's the red flag that some people have with Christian Watson. But a big difference with Christian Watson versus a player that just gets lucky with touchdowns is if you're going to be looking at his yards per route run. Christian Watson was at the very top of this rookie class this past year in yards per route run at the wide receiver position. That, in my mind, signifies he is a phenomenal talent. Now, of course, the issue is you don't really know what the situation is going to be, right? I mean, you have Jordan Love where maybe, just maybe Jordan Love's great, but in reality, you don't know. Now, our next two guys, we're going to have Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison. Now, if you're going over to underdog drafts right now, you'll actually see that Addison's going ahead of Johnston in these drafts. And it makes sense, right? Like expectations for this next season and this next season only should probably be that Addison outscores Johnston. Johnston's going to be competing with Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Whereas if you're going to be looking at Jordan Addison, you really have just TJ Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson, right? But at the end of the day, if you're projecting this out for 2024, you're really uncertain what the long-term looks like with an aging running back in Austin Eckler, with Keenan Allen, who will be going into like year 11, and with Mike Williams, who at the same time will be pushing 30. So we can assume for the long term that Johnston is going to be in the better situation, even if Addison's in the short term in a better spot. But going back to what we're looking at with Johnston, he also checks every single box. I mean, both these guys pretty much do. They both break out as true freshmen. They both dominate as sophomores. They both declare as juniors, and they're both round 1 NFL draft picks. They're phenomenal prospects. The only thing I could really knock any of them for would be Jordan Addison with his size, which will be why we have him one spot behind Johnston. Now, our last guy in this tier is going to be Jerry Jeudy. Now, y'all know I've been the proponent, I've been the leader of Jerry Jeudy over Courtland Sutton. I mean, think about how much I got made fun of last year for saying that and just dogging and saying Sutton's horrible, Sutton's horrible. What are we talking about here? Well, with Jerry Jeudy, while, yeah, I still definitely believe that he's the wide receiver 1 in Denver, as we always have. At the same time, we can say it's probably not a great situation this next year, right? Where, yeah, you get the quarterback upgrade. And hopefully Denver's offense is better overall. I think we should assume it's better overall. You do at the same time add in a decent amount of depth at wide receiver that was not here last year. You add in Marvin Mims in the second round. That's nothing to overlook. On top of this, you go through and get Tim Patrick put back into this offense. Tim Patrick's hanging out at NBA games with Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. I think Tim Patrick's probably going to be a little involved as well. So what I'd be a little bit worried about in Denver with how this is all shaking out is maybe you don't have a prototypical alpha wide receiver 1 seeing 25 to 30% of his team's target share. I think, honestly, the ball probably gets spread around a little bit of everywhere in Denver this next season. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to be going with Jahan Dotson. Love the player, right? Love the prospect. Really like the flashes that we saw year 1. The primary issue is going to be the situation he's in this next season. You have Sam Howell as your starting quarterback. I mean, I really didn't think Sam Howell was going to be a starting quarterback in 2023 until the Washington Commanders didn't go all out for a quarterback in free agency. They didn't go all out for a quarterback in the NFL draft. And we're sitting here going, okay, I guess it's Sam Howell, which isn't great. Now, our next guy will be Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce was a buy low guy for us right before the NFL draft because you clearly saw Devin Singletary was signed to be a backup. On top of this, if you were looking at what the Houston Texans were looking to do, they were looking to improve the quarterback position, and this offense should be much better going forward. Yeah, so I actually like Dameon Pierce. I definitely said to sell him high a while ago at the end of his rookie season when his value was at that peak. Yes, we did say to sell him high given the uncertainty of the upcoming offseason for Dameon Pierce. But the man won the offseason, and he's actually worth less than he was then, which is crazy. In my mind, he should be worth more. So I'm going after Dameon Pierce now. And our last guy, Jameson Williams. With Jameson, I wasn't a big fan of him coming out of school. I think he can be a great real-life NFL wide receiver and how he can improve the overall Detroit Lions offense by giving them that vertical threat, by getting them the ability to stretch NFL defenses and funnel targets underneath to someone like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I do think Jameson could still be a great wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, but given the fact that if you're looking at his target share at Alabama, he wasn't really a target hog there. He was just hyper efficient, and his profile coming into this next season, I'd say overall, he's probably not going to be a target hog and probably not going to be as good in fantasy as he is going to be in real life. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much for checking out this video. If you have not done so already, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And of course, if you want to get all my Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings, you can on flockfantasy.com. And when you use promo code FLOCK, you're going to get 30% off any subscription, and yours truly will make a podcast breaking down your Dynasty team. Or if you want a free trial to flockfantasy.com, get my Dynasty rankings that way and get in some drafts today. And always go sign up for Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK there. You'll get all that plus 100% deposit match. But thank you. Really appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. Really do hope you have a great day, and really hope that we get to see you with the live stream on the Flock Fantasy YouTube channel.